Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the People's Law School. Again, we're in our 18th year of presenting this educational program to you, the people of Alabama, and it has been our goal and our effort, and I believe we've achieved our purpose in presenting to you the absolute best lawyers in America. Tonight is no exception. Mr. David Cromwell Johnson will speak to us tonight, and I know that some of you may have seen Saturday's Birmingham paper where Governor Sigelman has hired Mr. Johnson as his attorney, and it made front page. I'll tell you this, if he'd hired any other lawyer, it probably wouldn't be headlines in the Birmingham paper. But Mr. Johnson, over the years, is well known throughout the nation. I will tell you that he represented, well, do you remember when Jet Williams, Hank Williams' daughter, applied for her inheritance after all those years? Well, this is her lawyer. He's also represented the former governor of Alabama, Governor Folsom, the mayor of Birmingham, the sheriff. He presently represents Governor Sigelman. He was the lawyer in the road rage case, and if you remember, Mr. Johnson was the lawyer for Peggy Lowe, Betty Wilson's sister, the one that was acquitted. David Johnson's reputation is extraordinary. His abilities are renowned. I think those of you who have seen him speak to the People's Law School before know exactly what you're in for, and I'm just so pleased he could come talk to us tonight. David Cromwell Johnson.
I really don't know why they got me up here to talk about this, because I really don't know anything about it, to be honest with you. I've been practicing law for 30 years. I've had over 500 trials, and I keep getting worse and worse and worse at selecting juries, because the people I like don't like me. I've got a little, under the rules of the ages, I got a little quote from the Bible, from Ecclesiastes. And it says, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. The sun also rises and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes toward the south and turns around to the north. The wind whirls around continually and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return. All things are full of labor, man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is will be, and that which is done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after us." The point is that I think we make a fundamental mistake in thinking that people in the year 2002 are better or different than they were when Jesus lived, or 3,000 years before Jesus lived. It's the same model, folks. We ain't improving it. The same people, same faults, same strengths, same character deficiencies, same all of those things. And the point is, you can study people, and you can learn things about people. I've got the next page in this outlines about Joseph Campbell. He talks about myth. It's a phenomenal thing about how our lives are influenced by our ancestors' lives, and about things that we feel in our subconscious mind that we don't even understand and can't articulate, but they influence our decisions. And so when you're coming into the courtroom to strike a jury, you have to take a lot of factors into consideration: how to persuade people, how to present yourself, how to speak. For example, I taught, first 5 years I practiced law, I tried 200 cases. I was in the district attorney's office. I was very lucky. Everybody left, and I got a chance to try a lot of cases, which practice makes perfect. And I also taught 17 years. At one time, for 5 years, I taught every night of the week, learning how to speak and how to communicate with people. And you have to do those things. So we'll talk about jury selection tonight, and I want you to keep in mind when we're talking about jury selection that people don't change. They are the same, and so you can study people. The problem is that maybe the conclusions you reach about them aren't the right conclusion when you're selecting a jury. So let's start with the first and most fundamental thing about selecting a jury. You don't get who you want. You do not get who you want. I can't tell you how many times I have spent thousands and thousands of dollars and tried to get what is called shadow juries, tell you what ordinary people, that is non-lawyers, are thinking. You all are ordinary people, which is good, by the way. You could be a lawyer. And it's very, very interesting because the concept that's ultimately involved with the jury is that 12 sets of ears hear things. It's amazing how inept we are as lawyers and what we present to people, and how little or how terrible our communication is on basic concepts. And it takes a lot of work to be able to just to get the simplest thing to communicate it effectively to people. And particularly where I have a case right now involving CNN that where we're suing CNN. It's 32,000 documents in the first wave of production. I mean, it just takes to meld all that down. But anyway, you don't get to choose who you want, all right? You get to choose who you don't want. And the problem is you never have enough choices. And the real problem is you never have enough information. That is the real problem. Now, I will tell you this, and you may not believe this, but it's the honest-to-God truth. If I could get 12 people whose minds have not been made up, who come in and will give me a fair shot, I believe I can win every time. One reason I believe I can win every time is because I'm not going to take the case to trial if I have no chance to win. All right? But you don't get a fair shot. You don't get a fair shot. You try to find out from people how they really feel, all right? But they're not going to tell you. When I first started out, I used to watch lawyers say, "Anybody here prejudiced?" Nobody would raise their hand. You know? It's just, you're wasting your time. So, how do you find out how people really feel about lawyers, about the issues in the case, about being a juror, about the legal system? And does it depend on whether it's a civil case or a criminal case? Of course it does. Of course it does. And people lie to you. They won't tell you the truth. And they don't lie to you out of any bad or malevolent motive. They just simply, for example, in a crowded room, that somebody doesn't want to say, "Yeah, I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan, I don't like black people." That's just not going to happen. Or the person that doesn't like black people is not going to raise their hand and say, "I don't like black people." That's just not, somebody, in front of 65 people, you're not going to admit your prejudice. And you're not going to admit various things about you. So what I try to do is, and I've got here in the first handout is a jury questionnaire, which, by the way, I spent about 50 hours on this thing. I know it doesn't look like much, but this is about 50 hours worth of work. And you know the reason I spent 50 hours on this? Because, let me see, I think it was within the last couple of months, I had a case where a young girl had a couple of beers at a bar, and on her way home, supposedly she went across a yellow line and supposedly, according to the prosecution, killed 2 people. All right? And I asked questions in that case. I believe I asked the question, but I'm not absolutely sure. But I believe I asked about firemen. And a chief of a volunteer fire department got on that jury. 11 people were in favor of acquitting my client, and that one fireman I never had a chance with. I never had a chance. Now, when you spent $20,000 or $30,000, you've got experts there, and you've gone through the whole thing, and you've done a fantastic job, and you convinced 11 people, and you find out you've got one person that you never had a chance with. If I had known he was a fireman, I would have struck him. Because firemen are just like policemen. They stick together. I'll tell you how I learned that lesson. When I was a prosecutor, I prosecuted a policeman, and a fireman was on the jury and acquitted. That was when I lost that case. By the way, I've lost a number of cases. Matter of fact, the best lessons I ever got were at the point of a spear. Somebody was just about to put it right between my sternum, right here, you know. But I learned about life, and that's what jury's all about, life, and convincing people, and reading body language, and reading clothes, and, you know, seeing things, how people. So you want to know things like, I'll tell you we're talking about selecting a jury, and let's just assume that you all are the veneer, okay? And let's just assume it's a murder case, and here I come into court. What do y'all think about me? I represent the defense, and you all immediately you think, well, the good guys are the police and the prosecutors. That's not true. It's not true. They break more. They've been indulged in the last 20 years by the courts, and they can now break rules with impunity, which is bad for anybody. You know, that's bad for your children. It's bad for anybody. When the cops break the rules and then you change the rules, and they say, well, they can break that rule, and they can break that rule, and they can break this rule, and then they get into bad habits. So you start out, and you would like to, when you're selecting a jury, you'd like everybody to sit there, and you'd like to have their names written down so you don't look too bad. If you're like me, I can't remember names. I'm too focused, okay? So, and it's nice if you can remember. What's your name?
Rudy.
Rudy. What's your last name, Rudy?
Barraza.
Barraza. That's why I write them down. But I mean, if every time Mr. Barraza raised his hand and I knew his name, he would be impressed by that. You know, and he should be. He should be impressed by that, because I've made an extra effort with him. One of the great things about John F. Kennedy is he could remember people's names. He would get off the plane and tell the names of people he'd never seen before. That's probably the finest thing you can do for somebody in social contact, is remember their names, because it lets them know that you think they're important. Just like the best thing you can do for your child is spend time with them. It's worth more than anything else you can do with it, anything you can buy for them, because it tells them you think they're important. So how do you communicate with a jury if you walk in and it's a murder case? Let's just say it's Peggy Lowe, which is one came from up here. I walked into the jury in Montgomery, Alabama, after Betty Wilson had been convicted. And I'm naive. I'm about half crazy, too, because I believe I can win. And you got to be a little bit crazy to believe you can win. I walk in that jury down there, and we start asking questions, and we find out that every single person in that jury veneer had heard about the case, knew about the verdict in Tuscaloosa, and believed that Betty Wilson was guilty, and therefore believed her sister was guilty. Try that one on. Try swimming upstream against those odds. But I got them all. I got 12 people who told me from their heart, I believed, and it was true, that they would give me a fair shot. And they did. So at any rate, I was talking about bumper stickers, and in that case, we had a jury questionnaire, which is the finest thing you could possibly do. From a lawyer's standpoint, this is what you want. You want a jury questionnaire. I don't want to ask you if you know police officers, if you've ever been a juror before. I don't want to ask you these questions if I can get you to write it down. Why? Because you're not embarrassing yourself. You're putting it on a piece of paper. The only people that see it are the lawyers. And we're going to, believe me, we are not going to go out of our way to embarrass you. All right? We're going to go out of our way to make you feel comfortable if we can, because we're trying to communicate with you, and we're trying to sell you on the idea that it's just like an election. It's not as bad as an election. In an election, sometimes you got to make a choice between two bad choices. Have you ever thought about that? In the jury, you're supposed to, make the choice about what is right. But at any rate, I happen to know this girl because she had been in the district attorney's office in Birmingham. She was now in the attorney general's office, and one of the questions was, do you have a bumper sticker? She did. What does it say? It said, justice. Well, folks, let me just tell you something. There is nobody that I've ever met in my life that wants justice. And that's the truth. And the God of Jesus Christ is a God of mercy and compassion. He is not a God of justice. Because if we got justice, we'd all be in hell. Every single one of us, without exception. So just keep that in mind where if you ever have to serve on a jury. Of course, the Bible also says about serving on a jury, don't sit in judgment on people, which troubles me. Because I would not want to sit in judgment on somebody. I'm up here on this side. I'm not having to make judgments about people's lives. But at any rate, justice. So because we have a questionnaire, what you do is you have a questionnaire, so you get to follow it up with individual voir dire in a big case like that case was. So we bring her in. Of course, I already knew the answers. I mean, she didn't even have to say she had a license tag that said justice. I knew how she felt. What does justice mean to you? She said, people ought to get what's coming to them. And boy, by God, she was there to make sure they did. So that's another question I love that you can ask on a questionnaire. You can't ask to an audience like this, is based upon, if it's a high publicity case, high profile case, based upon what you've read or heard, do you think the defendant is probably guilty? And people will answer that truthfully. Once again, because they're using the questionnaire, they're not having to admit they've got a preconception in front of a large group of their fellow people, all right, fellow man. And so they answer the question. And you know what? They answer the question because it's the right answer. Yes, they've already formed an opinion. Matter of fact, most of you all, right now, if I took you right out of this courtroom right now and took you up to the criminal court tomorrow morning and we started jury selection in the case, you'd think that if I was a defense lawyer, I was a bad guy, and you'd think that if the defendant's on trial, where there's smoke, there's fire, he's probably guilty because otherwise he wouldn't be here. The police are too good. They're patriots. They wouldn't bring somebody up that's innocent. That's what you all believe, the American citizen, especially white people. Yeah, that's what you believe. So you want to get this information. Now, another reason why you want to use the questionnaire is because if you use the questionnaire and you get the honest answer, all right, you can also ask a lot more questions if the judge will let you ask them. And sometimes you get in, in a criminal case, you get in a bind, you want to know about, for example, alcohol. This case I just finished trying where it was 11-1 to acquit. I told the jury right in the voir dire, this lady had 3 drinks in 3 hours, three beers in 3 hours. One guy comes up to me, and I'm not violating anybody's confidence. He comes up in the individual voir dire and he says, I can't believe you're even talking about this. I can't believe you even raised this point. I can't give this lady a fair trial. She's been drinking and driving. Now, is there any, I realize that probably 25% of the people in this room have never had a drink and driven. But most of you have, or at least a lot of you have, maybe half of you have. Are you willing to reach that conclusion? You will not give anybody a fair trial just because they're merely charged with a case involving drinking and driving? It's frightening. It's frightening if you're sitting next to me at the table and you're on trial. It's frightening. So you like to find out about people's occupation. This is one of the worst places in the state of Alabama, if not the United States of America, to try a civil case from the plaintiff's standpoint or a criminal case from the defense standpoint. Because y'all got all these engineers up here and retired Army people. I mean, you might as well just just don't even have trials up here. Just go straight to jail. Seriously. I'm telling you, folks, if when you die and you go to the pearly gates and God is either an accountant, a nurse, retired military, a police officer, and what else did I just say? Huh? Engineer. You're in bad shape. And if it's a black woman, you might as well just turn around and go the other way. I had a case one time, the biggest healthcare fraud and abuse case probably in the history of this country. It was over in another state. I won't say where it was. I may have to go back there one day. My client was an accountant. We were winning the case, okay? One of my favorite sayings is quit while you're behind and quit while you're ahead. Sometimes it's just better to quit. And so we had essentially won this case, and everybody else was going down the great big toilet. So we're standing out and we're discussing whether or not he's going to testify. And he wants to set the record straight. The record does not need to be set straight, folks. We've already won the case. We're standing out there in these federal courtrooms. They have cameras all around in the chambers where out where the judges are. We get in a fist fight. The judge has to come out, take his robe off, and break us up. I wouldn't let him testify. I'm serious. And he won, by the way. Everybody else went down. So you got to, it's very important the kinds of people you get on the jury. It's very important if you're retired military. I mean, I've had cases where they've snuck on, and just, once again, I never have a chance. Their mind is never open. Now, can you imagine how frustrating that is? Because you're up there for a week, you have poured your heart and soul into the case, you've given it everything you've got, you've worked nights and weekends to get ready, you put a tremendous amount of effort and thought into it, you've given it all you've got, and believe me, this is tough, folks. This is trial law is tough. It's no place for the weak, the faint-hearted. And you never had a chance. Can you imagine how disappointing that is? Well, no, number one, you get disappointed yourself for being so stupid. How could I have missed this? Number two, you get disappointed in human beings because they're supposed to be there to do justice or some form of justice, you know? And you make one mistake, and it's all a dry run. Matter of fact, it's worse than a dry run. Because the only chance you've got is to lose. You have no chance to win. Because this person's not going to change their mind. I don't care how good you are. I don't care what kind of job you do. In this case that I just talked about, it was embarrassing. The state's case was embarrassing. It involved a state trooper is an accident reconstruction expert. A year after the accident, he decided that he could take a little plastic, little thing like this. He drew the car and the truck that were involved in this accident just like this, on a little plastic overlay that you could move between the lines on a highway. He based his entire testimony. Remember, you're trying to put somebody in the penitentiary based on your testimony. Based his entire testimony on the fact that the diagrams that he used, that these little cars and trucks were drawn to scale, and they weren't. That ought to put you all in terror, folks. It didn't. It scared the hell out of you. That means somebody is going on trial because of an inept man that didn't know what he was talking about, who is wrong a year later. I still didn't ever have a chance. See? That's frustrating. It's also, if you were the defendant, it'd be real frustrating because then now you got to do it all over again, and guess what? You get to pay me all over again. Which is something people never tell you, and that is that most people can't afford a criminal trial anymore. I would venture to say almost nobody in this room, if you were charged with murder, could afford to defend yourself. Or you certainly couldn't afford to hire me, I can tell you that. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's beyond most people, most people's ability. As a matter of fact, if I'm going to do a criminal case, mostly I do them just because I haven't got good sense. But I sure don't make any money off of them. So we talk about all these things. I've got the wrong one here. It's important what you look like. It's important how you act. It's important of course, I've been done speaking so much, and the reason I did it for so many years is so I get good at it. But I don't use notes. I don't use a script. I don't write things out because I think that takes away. I think that takes away from my openness with you all. I think it takes away from my confidence, my trustworthiness. Of course, you never lie to people. You know, people think that life is too long. Life is too short. That's a bunch of bunk. Life is too long, especially if you're a trial lawyer. And why do I say life is too long? Because if you've been doing this 30 years and you've been lying and deceiving people for 30 years, it will catch up with you. As a matter of fact, it would have caught with me about 15 years ago. It really will. It's not life is too short, life is too long. That's why you have integrity. And of course, that's what people are buying when you're talking to them. That's what people are buying. So, you know, how are you dressed? Mr. Aziz and I just had supper, and I told him about 20 years ago, I defended Sammy Canavespri, Sammy's Go-Go in Birmingham. And we did a jury selection survey, and that's about what people's attitude. I mean, what would this lady right here think? Just walking in the courtroom without knowing nothing else, what would she think about Sammy's Go-Go? You know, I mean, liquor, women, you know, sex, all the things that titillate you all. So I go to the first trial. The bomber is black. He's 6'6". He comes into court. This was not Sammy's trial. This was the preview. They were going to convict this guy so you can use him against Sammy's. He comes into court. He's 6'6". He's got a pair of red lizard skin boots on, which makes him about 6'8". Now he's 6'8". He's got a white Panama suit on and a white hat, one of these Panama hats. And he's got on dark sunglasses, these sunglasses that, you know, it's almost a felony to wear them. He is standing next to his 15-year-old white girlfriend. They are not married. I don't know whether that'd be worse or better. And she is holding their little mulatto child who's about 18 months old. Now, it's over, folks. It doesn't matter who your lawyer is. It never gets off the ground. It never even gets, it doesn't even crack the egg. I mean, it's over. It's over. You don't even have to have evidence. I'm serious. Listen, I'm talking about things that are real. You don't have to have evidence. If I came in here in a pink plaid sport coat and, you know, purple trousers or something like that, I mean, if, you know, one of the worst things that people do is they dress their client up for court. Don't ever dress your client up for court. Don't let your client do anything but what's natural. What does he wear every day? That's what he ought to show up in court in. Otherwise, haven't you seen people, you put a suit on them and they're uncomfortable, they look like they're uncomfortable, they look like it's the first time they've worn a suit in 15 years? What does the jury think? They think that's phony. Dress them up natural. Of course, we do not want any, unless it's Elvis. I mean, Elvis could get away with it. But I mean, you want them to have a haircut. You want them to look nice. You don't want them smoking. You don't want them tugging on your arm every minute. You know, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's a lie, that's a lie. You can't. You know, they got to sit there and take it like a man or a woman. I don't know which is worse there either. And appearance is so important. I mean, this is going to frighten you. It's in there. It's an article I wrote years ago, but it's the standard on jury selection in a criminal case. It's in the rules of the ages, the second part of the handout. You know that 20% of the people make up their mind about the guilt or innocence in a criminal case of somebody within the first 5 minutes they're exposed to the parties. That means I haven't even said, hello, my name is Johnny Cash. I always loved that. And Waylon Jennings just died. I'm going to talk about David Allan Coe in just a minute because that's where I learned how to practice law. The perfect country and western song. You don't even get to say hello. They really don't even get to hear the charges read. They come in the court and they look at you, and if they don't like you, once again, it's over because of the principle called primacy. People make up their mind. Once they make up their mind, they don't change their mind. You've got to be heroic. I mean, you've got to be great, beyond great, to get people to change their mind once they've made up their mind. So I just hope that I can just neutralize them. They won't look at me and say, oh, my God, oh. You know, it's like sodomy, the definition at the common law, a crime too terrible to describe. And then they, you know, you talk about things. If you don't talk about the issues up front, jurors think you're trying to hoodwink them. I mean, if I'm trying to hide something, and I don't talk about it, I don't bring it out up front, then they're going to hold that against me. By the time the opening statement is made, 80% of the people have made up their mind and will never change it. That's before any evidence is made. They see you, you strike the jury, you make an opening statement about what the case is about, and it's over for 80% of the people. And of course, there's another fundamental I haven't really talked about. That is the strong person on the jury. One person can you ever see 12 Angry Men? Henry Fonda? Now, come on, folks. There's some people in here as old as I am now. Don't lie to me. So you're looking at people. One of the things I look at is I look at how people are dressed. If somebody is dressed inappropriately, you want to know that. You want to know that. Why do you want to know that? Because if they're dressed inappropriately, they're being somebody they really aren't. If somebody that is a blue-collar worker dresses up and wears a pair of gray pants and a navy blazer and a tie and particularly a blue shirt, I don't want him on one of my juries because he wants to be something he's not. If a doctor comes in and they're dressed like that gentleman back there, what's your name? Yeah. Mr. Strawn? Swan. If they're dressed like Mr. Swan, it's a doctor. That's somebody you do want on a jury because he doesn't have any pretensions. He's just a regular person. You don't want people who've been on juries before, if you can help it, in a criminal case. I remember one time I was trying a civil case, and I'm one of the few lawyers that tries both criminal and civil. Actually, civil is easy once you've done the criminal, which is trial by ambush. No, there's no discovery. There's no discovery. I can't even find out who the witnesses are. So I mean, you're meeting them the first time when they appear. What do I have to tell? 8:30.
Until 8:40.
All right. You meet them for the first time when they appear in court, and try that on sometime. You know, it's like Brother Dave Gardner once said, "Here, Julius, hold this." You know, when Brutus stuck the. It's tough. So, you know, you want to know how people think about issues. And I remember it was a civil case, and we had a big-time lawyer. These big car crash, excuse me, not crash, it wasn't a crash witness case. These products liability cases attract the very best lawyers. I mean, Chrysler or GM or, you know, whoever it happens to be up here. I'm not talking about car dealers, but they're manufacturers up here. I mean, they get the very best lawyers. And by the way, the defendant always has the best lawyers in civil cases, except for some of the few plaintiff's lawyers. And that's because they get paid every day. They get paid every day. They get paid by the hour. They get paid whether they win or lose, you know. And just like in criminal cases, the prosecutor gets paid whether he wins or loses, and they got investigators, and they got an unlimited budget, and they can just grind you into the ground. That's why I say most of y'all can't afford to defend yourself. And if it wasn't for the contingent fee, you couldn't afford to bring a lawsuit. I'm not going to, if you're a working man and your wife's been hurt in an accident and she's paralyzed for the rest of her life and you've got nobody to take care of your children, how are you going to pay a fee to go to court? You can't. So just trust me on this one. People with money are always going to win in the long run. All right? Isn't that sad? Isn't that sad? So you're trying to figure out things, and I had in Birmingham, there's a place called Mountain Brook. We call it the Tiny Kingdom. That's where all the rich white people live. And there were 3 women on the jury, on the veneer, whose husbands owned businesses. I swear to God, this is the honest truth. This is the honest truth. The judge excused 2 of those women just because of the way they looked at me. That's how much they hated me. Just what I represented. I was representing somebody who was suing because they claimed they'd been injured by a defective product. 2 of them were dismissed because you could tell the look on their face. We didn't even get into the tort reform issues. What do you think about punitive damages? You know, what do you think about suing people? You think verdicts are too high and all that stuff? And of course, you all just like sheep. You've bought all that stuff. So you know, someday you're not going to have any rights and you're not going to be able to sue anybody, which is what you deserve. But I'll be gone by then. So another case I had, another products case, where the judge was in Blount County, Alabama. Now, when you go into the small counties, you actually get more accurate information than you do here, because they still release the jury lists in advance of trial. So you're not going into court in a metropolitan area with hundreds of thousands of people, and you don't have enough of a database to know anything about these people, what they've done in the past, or whether, you know, all the information you can get off them. Of course, the defense in civil cases and the prosecution in criminal cases have computers either the consumers or the taxpayers are paying for, and they have all this information. I'm talking about the folks on my side. We don't have this information. But in a small town, you do, because there's only 30,000 people in the county, and the sheriff knows them, or the judge knows them, or the lawyer knows them, somebody knows them. So we have a case up here. We have $600,000 invested in the case. $600,000 invested in the case. I'll tell you that because it's going to become important. So we have caught General Motors faking a crash test. They faked the crash test, and nobody had ever called their hands on it, and they never expected anybody to call their hands on it, so they thought they could get away with it, which people will do every single time they can do it, just like the police that don't follow rules. If you don't have to, if there's no punishment when you get caught, then you'll keep doing it. It's just human nature. I mean, I've just read to you from Ecclesiastic, nothing is different. It's all the same. The sun rises and the sun sets, and it will continue to. So we do our homework because we got a lot invested in this case. We got a lot riding on it. Folks, these are after-tax dollars. These are after-tax dollars that I've had to pay taxes on and invest in the cases in order to bring the cases. And we've spent an extra $200,000 because the judge ordered them to replicate the test, and we were the only people in the history of this country to ever get back on the proving grounds out in Arizona. It was like, almost like everybody ever seen Dr. Strangelove? You know, the big board? Huh? George C. Scott, don't let them see the big board. In Dr. Strangelove, they have this. So for you all, y'all can't be. I mean, this is Huntsville, Alabama. You haven't seen Dr. Strangelove? The big board. It's the war room, the United States war room. You know, it's got all the information, all the data from the, you know, everything that's happening in the world. You know, and they let the Russian ambassador in. And one of these generals goes crazy. He said, "You can't let them see the big board." So we got out there and we proved that this was a fake. So they had taken a case which they had a chance to win and turned into a case they couldn't win. Because what they did, they committed the fundamental principle that you can't do. They lied in gathering this evidence, which means they're going to present a lie to a jury. And if a jury ever catches you in a lie, the party's over. It doesn't matter what the faction case. They just, almost without exception. The jurors don't like lawyers that lie to them and don't like people that lie to them. They shouldn't. Matter of fact, you ought to be penalized for lying to a jury. And juries do penalize people. So, anyway, we have this case. We have all this money invested. We got all this stuff on the, and I'm once again working without a net, standing on a banana peel. This girl's in a coma. She's brain injured. will be, it still is, in a coma. That was 15 years ago. The sheriff tells us that one man on this jury, under no circumstances, that we should ever let this man on the jury, period. I got my client. Talk to my client. My client says, and you know, I ought to be more mature than this, but I'm not. My client, because I'm a salesman, I guess. My client tells me this man, they drink coffee together. This man is a friend of the family. This man loves this girl. We leave him on the jury, despite the fact that we have been told, you know, it's like telling a kid, if you put your hand on this hot plate, it's going to burn your hand, son. The sheriff tells me, don't put your hand on this hot plate, Dave, because he's going to burn your hand. We settle a case after the opening statements. The jury is sitting there, and it's announced to him the case has been settled after the opening statements. He gets out of the jury box and walks over to the defense attorney. I love this. I'll love it for the rest of till the day I die, because this is how you really get an advantage on somebody. He tells the defense attorney, why did you settle this case? We weren't going to give her anything. Information. I had the right information. I just didn't act on it. And why do I love that result? Because that strikes fear into the hearts of the other side. It tells you exactly what I started this thing with, and you thought I was being frivolous. I told you I don't know what I'm doing. None of us do. We can't read minds. Now, some of us are better than others. Some of us are, particularly women. I'm not intuitive, you know. Tell me how I do this, I have no idea. But, you know, I can process data and I can make good decisions, but I have to have somebody with me. I'm kind of like a blind man without a cane. I got to have somebody seeing what's going on and tell me, hey, Dave, that woman was scowling at you. So, at any rate, you know, you don't know what people think. You don't know what I'm here sizing you all up right now. I mean, I'm like a, you know, like one of those Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, you know, The Terminator. You know, I'm gathering data that's going into my mind. Unfortunately, it's going back out of my mind, unlike The Terminator. What do you do? You know the reason I left the volunteer fireman because he looked like a punk rocker. I mean, he looked like he was anti-establishment, so I got seduced by the way he looked. And when he didn't answer the question correctly, I didn't pick it up. So, who are you and how many kids do you have? I always want people with children. And it's not that I have anything against people that don't have children. But I'd like to have people with children because they've had children. And children are problems. And children create a new, you know, if you never had children, it's a wondrous thing that God does for you. If you've never had, no, it really is. If you've never had children, you don't miss them. Think about it. But if you've had children, you would miss them. And it adds dimension and depth, and it adds suffering to your life. I certainly want people who have suffered. Give me a jury of 12 people who have suffered, and I'll be happy, whatever decision they make. I'm serious. I'm serious. You want people that have suffered because they have some empathy. You don't want some engineer that sits at the table all day in Huntsville with a slide rule, you know, saying, all right, this is 1.4 cubic centimeters, and if by God, if it's 1.5, away with them. That's the truth. The accountant, he wants to explain it even if it's going to put him in the penitentiary. By God, he wants to be right. No, seriously. So, you know, you want to know if a woman is a housewife. You want to know where she lives, and you want to know how long she's been married, whether she's got grandchildren, and what the man does, and how long he's worked there. You want to know if a guy's a foreman at a plant, don't you? You better know if a guy's a foreman at a plant because that's a leader. And if you make a mistake with him, he's going to be leading the other side. Serious. I've never lost a case with a doctor or a lawyer on the jury. Believe it or not. because I can communicate effectively. And they understand reasonable doubt. Now, I'm talking about I've never lost a criminal case. I wouldn't have them in a civil case. I showed it one time for a medical malpractice case. There were 3 insurance company vice presidents and 4 nurses on the veneer. Yeah, God's trying to tell you something. I'm serious. It's just not, you're just not going to win. Too bad. And when you got $150,000 after taxes invested in the case, and you got a lady whose husband was paralyzed because the doctor cut her husband's, he walked into the hospital and he never left. Not only did he cut his spinal column, but he also exposed the fluid to the air, and he got meningitis. It's called getting away with murder. Happens all the time. Happens all the time. Matter of fact, up here, I don't think there's been a malpractice verdict against a doctor in the last 50 or 60 years. It doesn't matter what the doctor does. He can come in with a dead gum meat cleaver. I'm serious. And you all will buy it every time because he's a doctor. I defended a doctor one time, shot 2 people who were unarmed in front of 50 eyewitnesses. Not guilty. I figured if they worked for them, it could work for me too. I'm serious. Marcus Welby. Of course, he was not guilty. How about that? Does that make you feel better? You want to know, do you own a business? Do you own stock? Have you ever been bankrupt? I couldn't ask you all. That's not something I would ask you. I would not ask you in a room like this, if you were the veneer, if anybody's ever been bankrupt. It would be embarrassing to you. But you would answer it on this piece of paper if you got a jury questionnaire. And that would be something that would be very important to me. You ever been sued? Ever sued anybody? You see, now you're asking questions that people will answer, and these questions they'll answer truthfully. It's not like, are you prejudiced? But have you ever been sued? You ever sue anybody? You ever been on a jury? You ever testified in a case? You ever have your deposition taken under oath? Ever had somebody on trial? Ever been the victim of a violent crime? People whose families have been victims of violent crime will never give you a fair shot. They think everybody's guilty. You know, in a rape case. Now what did you, I'll give you, I told him I was not going to let y'all ask any question, but who would you think you would want if you were defending a quote-unquote rapist in now I'm not talking about a violent rape case which involved murder and that kind of thing. Who do you think you'd want on a jury if you were to represent the defendant? You'd want a woman. Women don't like women. Women do not like women. I don't care what you all say. You don't like each other. And you know why you don't like each other? Because you know what's on your mind. You understand each other. I'm serious. And if it's a date rape or it's a non-violent, I mean, I'm talking about, there's some rape cases where it's either it's this guy or it isn't. That's the only defense. Because somebody raped this woman. There's no question about that. I'm talking about the case where, you know, the difference between rape and seduction is salesmanship. I'll tell you about one of the devastating losses I had, which taught me how to practice law. This black guy has raped this black woman, and they're out in a parking lot, and the police drive up, and he gets out of the car and runs away. And they pick him up 2 days later, and he denies he was even there. Now, you would think that any idiot could win that case, wouldn't you? But see, your minds aren't thinking. She was black, so nobody cared about her. All right. She went to the free hospitals, what do you call them? What do you call them? Yeah, whatever they call them. At Cooper Green in Birmingham. She goes to Cooper Green. You've got a bunch of residents and interns working there. Don't give a hoot. They do a half you-know-what rape kit on her, and they find no semen. So we go to trial. I was young. I still had hair. I figured there's no way I can lose this case. The woman had left her husband that morning to run away with her boyfriend. So what does that automatically tell you? That automatically tell you she's dropped a real rung, okay? She's having an affair. She's leaving her husband, and she's run away with her boyfriend. But that's not how she got raped. The boyfriend, they go to a bar, and the boyfriend meets another girl and ditches her. So she's walking home, and she gets picked up by this guy. He takes her to family court. She says it's rape. He said, I didn't get a chance to do anything. The cops came too fast. And why'd you lie to the cops? Because I was afraid of them. I'm black. Makes sense to me. The argument was she spurned her husband that morning. She was spurned by her boyfriend that night. And she was spurned by this man. This man wanted to have sex with her, but she wouldn't let him. Or no, excuse me, it was the other way around. She wanted to have sex with him, but he was too scared. Not guilty. Not guilty. Tell you another one. This is the one where I began. This is David Allen Coe, okay? Life is all about whiskey and pickup trucks and railroad tracks and railroad trains and cars and mama. And, you know, this guy, this was when I was still a prosecutor. This one brought me to my knees. I thought I would never be a good lawyer. I was so hurt by this one that I'll tell you the story. The family wants to hire a special prosecutor. And I was young and I was full of you know what and you know what. Vinegar is one of the words. And I thought I was pretty good. Matter of fact, at one time I went 3 years without losing a case. Of course, if you're a prosecutor, you should win every one of them. So it's not any big achievement, okay? You should win every one of them because half the people like you all walk in there and they say, well, that's the prosecutor, that's the good guy. And this guy's charged with a crime. There's where there's smoke, there's fire. He must be guilty. So, I mean, you've got to be stupid to lose. And to lose one like this, you've got to be beyond stupid. This man is old man, about my age. You know, it really hurt my feelings. Last night I went to see a movie, and the lady asked me if I wanted a senior's ticket. I'll tell you what hurt my feelings. I was 5 years beyond the age limit. But at any rate, this guy is out on Sunday. That's another God's holy day. You know, now we've got God in here. We got religion in here. We got mama. We got the pickup truck. We got Sunday. We got the other woman. He's out with another woman. He's got whiskey in the front seat of his pickup truck. Now, that was back in the days when they didn't let you have whiskey on Sunday in Birmingham. Which is one of the greatest scams that's ever been pulled on you all. The preachers and the bootleggers getting together to keep the counties dry. That just shows you how dumb you really are. That means they can raise the price of whiskey. It's not going to keep you from drinking. So at any rate, this woman is in a white Cadillac. This man is worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's Sunday. It's another woman. He's cheating on his wife. He's got whiskey in the truck, pickup truck. She's out with her children. She's hunting him down so she can kill him. She runs him off the road in front of 13 eyewitnesses. He gets out of the truck with his hands up. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot me. Y'all lost all respect for you, don't you? Because you already know I lost this case. She gets out and takes aim at him and shoots him in cold-blooded murder. The defense, Daddy beat Mama. Well, I mean, I don't like him. I don't like that right off the bat myself. Children get up there and say, Daddy beat Mama. It's all a lie. Daddy beat Mama. Of course, Mama's an alcoholic, so was Father. Daddy was an alcoholic. They don't talk about Mama. I'm not. She looks like one of these. She looks like what's his name? The hands of Roberto Duran. That's what her face looks like. You know, an alcoholic's face. She says he's beat me. He beat me so many times I've gotten gun shy. He got out of that car, I thought he was coming for me. I thought when he put his hands up he was going for a gun. The jury finds her not guilty. Well, that hurt my feelings an awful lot. That's when I learned about David Allan Coe. And the Perfect Country and Western Songs has all those themes in it. He incorporates them all in there. About a week later, I'm slinking around, feeling sorry for myself around the courthouse, and I see one of the jurors. And we get to talking, and I don't believe in criticizing jurors. I did it one time in my life, and I was an idiot. Judge made me apologize. Like I said, we get worked up in these cases, folks. We get into them. And so I'm not really saying anything to him. And we talk a little bit, and I'm nice to him. He's nice. He's very nice to me. And as we're about to leave, I said, you know, she got that $5 million. He looks at me and said, how could she do that? She murdered him. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
How could she do that? She murdered him. I figured I'd miss something. In life, not in law school, in life. I figured I'd missed an awful lot, and I had. What is the defense always in murder, in self-defense? He got what he deserved. What is the defense in a rape case with a woman? She didn't fight enough. You know, that's why you want women. She didn't fight enough, or there's no way he could have raped me, or she shouldn't have been there in the first place. What? She asked for it. By God, I want her on my jury. I'm serious, folks. I'm serious. Which is is it time for me to quit? All right. Which is my point exactly about women, you know? I mean, if y'all don't want to make us hurt inside, well, why you dress up like that? Well, you can see that there are millions and millions of people, and there are millions and millions of combinations of things that happen, and it's just like trying to work a problem out. I mean, ultimately, with God, you have to have faith. You just have to put your trust in God, and you have to surrender to Him and let Him work it out. Same thing as essentially is involved with jurors. There's just too many. You can't read a person's mind. I would never get a chance to talk to a jury like I've talked to you all tonight. They don't know who you are. They don't know whether they can trust you. You don't know whether you can trust them. And they're looking at things, and they're being influenced by all the ideas and thoughts and events and activities of their entire lifetime. And if they are not going to give you a fair chance, you don't have a chance, no matter how good you are. He's running me out.